Welcome, and thanks for stopping by. Whether you're new to the channel or have been here before, if you enjoyed this video, please consider hitting that like and subscribe button. Today we're going to take a look at another watch from one of my favorite watch brands, the Zelos Hammerhead 2. This is frankly a watch that I never thought that I would own or be reviewing on this channel. The reason for that being, while I think it's a very attractive watch on the website and have always really enjoyed looking at it, with my 6.5-inch wrist, I always thought based on the specs that this would be way too big for me, and accordingly never considered it. I recently had the opportunity to pick one of these up and decided to go ahead and give it a chance. So let's go ahead and dive right into the specs and get that out of the way. As the title says, I refer to this as, in quotes, little big watch. And the reason for that being, while certainly nothing about this watch is what I would call a little watch or a thin watch, as you'll see, the specs are kind of deceiving with regard to how it actually wears. So first off, this is a 44mm case, but as you can see, it doesn't have a traditional case shape. So it's 44mm at its widest point, and in my opinion, it wears a little bit smaller than that would otherwise seem. Usually 42 is pushing it for my wrists, and I tend to gravitate more towards 40mm watches, but even at 44mm, this one wears quite nicely. The lug width here is 22mm, and it is important to note with this, while this is an aftermarket strap, and I'll have a link to if you're interested in more details or purchasing this strap in the description, it is important to note if you're looking for a strap that the stock strap, if you're wanting to reuse the buckle, unlike many of the other Zelos watches, does not taper. So this one is 22mm strap, and it is full 22mm, so it stays 22mm at the buckle as well. The lug to lug is part of what makes this watch wear shorter than the specs would otherwise seem. It only has a 48mm lug to lug length, so that's typically in line with many 42s and even 40mm watches. Some of those even have larger lug to lug than that, so that really helps a lot. The main thing that tends to scare people away is the overall thickness. This one comes in at 15mm, excluding the crystal, and it comes in at approximately 17 millimeters, including that double dome sapphire crystal. As we'll talk about here, that spec though, it's a little bit deceiving as far as the total thickness. Certainly, as you'll see on the wrist shots, and overall as you can see here, it by no means is a thin watch, but the case back here, as well as some of the other design features, really come into play to the total thickness, which I think makes it feel a little bit smaller on the wrist than the specs would otherwise indicate. This particular watch is available with two different movements. You can get an NH35, which this particular one is, and you can tell because the case back is not an exhibition case back. And then it also is available with an ETA 2892. The ETA 2892 has an exhibition case back. Otherwise, visually, it's very similar. That, of course, is a high beat movement, so you might be able to tell a slight difference in the actual movement going there. The prices for these, they range from, on the NH35 movement, they range from $449 up to $699, and that would be for this specific one, which is a double meteorite, which is the most expensive configuration. There are many different colorways available, many different styles and options in addition to the two movements. The ETA movement versions range from $749 up to $999, and again, the most expensive being the double meteorite with the ETA movement. Really want to highlight the double meteorite on this particular one. It is absolutely gorgeous. That black or gray, dark gray meteorite set into the bronze case. And this one, as we'll see when we get a little more into the case shots, this one's starting to develop just a light patina, but it still has that nice, gorgeous rose gold that Elshon and Zelos produce for their bronze watches. It's not the typical gold or more brass colored for the bronze, which is something I really love. I'm not a huge gold fan, and even the handset, you can see, has a little more of a gold hue to it, so it's not a traditional gold coloring there. For the Lume, as we'll see in a shot later on, we'll do a full Lume shot and some comparison images as well. The Lume on this, they never chintz out, and they use C3, so it is Swiss-made C3 for effectively all of the lumed parts, and this has Lume all the way around. You've got Lume on the bezel, the indexes, the hands, the second hand basically all over, and you actually have on the hands themselves, so in the perimeter, the chapter ring, you have BGW9, so you do get the blue for a little bit of contrast. And then on the hands, you can see there's 3 strips. The 2 outer strips are BGW9, and then the center strip is a C3. That's something I really like, not only for the visual accent, but you can see they have a wide, blocky hand, which personally I like a little more precision. It's nice for quick legibility, and I think it's very attractive with this overall case form. Perfect handset in my opinion. But the thing that's great about having that center line is if you look in there, you can see very precisely where it's pointed. So it almost gives you a thin handset kind of feature and effect when you're going through and trying to read the time or otherwise set it. So very nice touch there. So let's set this aside for a moment. And if you're not familiar with Zelos watches, this is the packaging that you can expect. It comes with this nice slip cover. Then inside, when you slide that off, it's an acacia wood box. Nice hinges, neodymium magnets, snap shut. Extremely nice, always impresses. Then inside of that, you'll have this pleather watch roll. Very nice quality. Love the newer colors they're doing with this kind of brownish gray. And then with the bronze one, it'll just come with the warranty card, which is an extremely cool warranty card. Does just come with a standard 1-year warranty. Personally, I would like to see a little longer warranty. That being said, Elshan, the owner of Zelos, is known for fantastic customer service, so I wouldn't let that scare you away. The bronze one, as I mentioned, has an aftermarket strap on it right now. The bronze, unlike the stainless steel, and these watches are available in either bronze or stainless steel cases, multiple colorways, both movements for both. They come with a little bit different in terms of accessories. The stainless steel will come with a stainless steel bracelet and the rubber. The bronze version only comes with the rubber strap. It does come with the buckle. That buckle, as you saw a moment ago, has been removed and is presently on my canvas strap. Very nice quality, supple, thick, which supports the case well. I will note, with my 6.5-inch wrist, this is 1 hole too short for me, so I would need an extra hole in here for this to work. That's one of the reasons that I personally don't use these. I love the Tropic straps on the Makos and some of the other models. Unfortunately, this particular one, while I think it's a great looking dive strap, if you have a 6.5-inch or smaller wrist, it probably will not work for you. I know that it does not for my wrist. But overall, nice touch. Get the Z logo on the keepers, raised here for sweat in drying off in water. So really nice overall packaging. All right, so back to the watch. Some of the really cool touches with this particular watch is you can see it's an extremely unique case design. The side profile here is reminiscent of a hammerhead shark's nose. And then looking through, you have very angular cuts. It's common to have angular cuts, maybe a polished chamfered edge, but having these sharp cuts like this one does is something that I know is pretty unique in my collection and from other watches that I've seen. That's further accented by having mixed of brushed finish. You can see that down the lower, and this is starting to pick up patina, so it doesn't have quite the sheen that it did when it was brand new out of the box. I've been wearing this for a few weeks now to get a good feel for it before I did a review. And then up top, it has a sandblasted. Visually, it adds a lot of appeal and intrigue, and this is one of the features that helps to slim it down, in my opinion. When you're looking at this on the wrist, in addition to these cuts helping, that finish in there, the way that comes around, it really helps to give it a slimmed down look. Coming up to the bezel here, we have really nice, deep, aggressive, tall bezel. This is a 120 click, and it is a unidirectional bezel. One of the really intriguing things with this, and this is a signature in the Zelos lineup, is the double meteorite. So it has a meteorite. This is an actual piece of meteorite. It's epoxy coated in there to protect it so it doesn't rust out as meteorite is prone to do otherwise. And it just really adds to the aesthetic appeal. The tactile click on this is just unbelievable. I have a lot of Zelos watches, and they're always extremely impressive with the bezels. This particular one, it vibrates through. It's easy to turn, especially with that very grippy notch on there. Doesn't dig into your hand at all, but it gives you perfect traction. just a complete treat to spin around. The only quality thing that I would notice with this particular one is the bezel insert is just a hair off. I'm really quibbling here. I'm pretty obsessive compulsive, and it doesn't bother me. It's maybe a quarter of a click off from perfect alignment, but I did want to mention the good and the bad, and that is something that I'm sure is just individual to this specific watch. As we spin around, you can see the helium escape valve. Then on the back, one of the cooler case backs that I've seen, very smooth. I know on like the Mako V3s and some others, people complain about sharp edges. That's not at all the case with this one. Everything is very smooth, very well finished, aesthetically attractive. In the case back, you have the double protection from greening of the skin with not only having a stainless case back, but additionally, the way this sits, there's very little that potentially would come into contact with your arm. I have yet to have any greening residue left off on my arm, as is common with some bronze watches. And coming around, you can see the in between the lugs, kind of straight in here, which makes it wear really nicely. So it just has that real smooth curve. So instead of fully cutting in like many do and having a big gap when you're wearing it on a strap, this is really designed to wear with straps, so it fits in perfectly. You can't miss this crown on the side. I'm usually not one to focus too much on crowns, but this crown, I've got to say, it blew me away. It's just such a cool feature. In addition to being at a 4 o'clock position, which helps with especially sticking out as much as it does, it's just so easy to grab a hold of. This is, of course, a screw-down crown. It's butter smooth to screw down. It does have, as you can see here, a lumed feature on the crown, and I've had other lumed watches from Zelos as well as I've seen some other ones. This particular one, I'm not kidding when I say this. It really is like a flashlight. It actually leaves light on your wrist whenever that's going. It's just exceedingly bright. Part of that is I think there's a little heavier of an application and it's thicker borders. And I'll drop in a picture in comparison to a Mako, which also has a lumed crown. Coming around, it's just, as you can see from any angle, it's just a beautiful watch to look at. Very distinct appearance to it. Has a nautical feel to me, and I think looks perfect in bronze. Coming around on, this is the stock buckle, so again, aftermarket strap, but stock buckle. Finish matches. It is, of course, bronze hardware on there. Just excellent all the way around. So one of the things I wanted to quickly address is I mentioned that this is the Hammerhead 2, which naturally I'm sure you would imagine that there was a predecessor to this one, which was just called the original Hammerhead, or now just the Hammerhead 1. That one, it does have a lot of differences between those, and I don't have one here to visually show, but wanted to touch on some of the differences because there was a whole heck of a lot that was changed. In addition to adding the helium escape valve, which is new to the HH2, they still both had the 1,000 meter for the water resistance, but this case here, so the mid case is a little bit thinner on the HH1. The case back is a little bit thinner. The double dome Sapphire Crystal is taller on the HH1. It is a significantly more higher dome to it. This one you can see is still referred to as a high double dome, but in my opinion, it's a pretty low double dome. It definitely is there, and you can tell it is by no means flat, but it's not a real high protrusion. Looking back to the face, the chapter ring is completely different. You now have numerals on it, which you did not on the HH1. Similarly, the markers, the index, not only the shape of those indexes, but the way that they cut in and interact with the bezel is completely different. The other ones were a little more pointed, almost looked like teeth coming in, and they rode over the chapter ring, whereas this is set into the chapter ring. It's reminiscent of like the original Horizons or Horizons V1, which we have another video talking about that and looking at some of those differences and how those cut in as well. The hands themselves are completely different. On the original, you had cutouts, so where it has these the outer strips or the outer lines, those were cutouts on that, and then the dial text is different as well, and then of course the dial materials and overall finishing. But the dial text on the original, I believe, just had the water resistance, whereas this has the Hammerhead 2 and then has the water resistance as has kind of become a signature marking for the Zelos watches. So overall, just an excellent watch. I've been extremely impressed with it, and it's one that I honestly did not expect that I was going to like. So I came in this with expecting this really to be my first Zelos that I wasn't crazy about. Putting it on wrist, you can see here, that case back just sinks down into the wrist. So a lot of that weight, because this is a fairly heavy watch, you don't notice it at all in the strap, but it does definitely have some heft. But a lot of that weight will push the case back down into your wrist, and it tends to slim it down. So in addition to the aesthetic features and touches, like I said, definitely not a small watch at all. And this camera image here is a little bit deceiving because it's closer up, tends to make it look a little bigger. I'll drop in some pictures that show with my arm hanging down at a natural distance. But just a really, really gorgeous watch. And with that short lug to lug, you can see no issues with fitting even on my 6.5-inch wrist. And I am not a big watch person at all. I'm not a big watch in size. I'm not a big watch in height. So this is not really my type of watch, which I know is some of the original Zelos watch and what some people still think of Zelos as being a big watch company, though many of their newer watches, especially look at the Horizons or the Makos, they wear very, very nicely and are great thin profiles and very versatile. That being said, this particular watch, I absolutely am not planning on selling this. This is one that I'm going to keep in my collection. It's very unique overall with the styling and different features. Introducing to show some comparison here, another watch that you may be familiar with and that we featured on the channel is the Swordfish. One of the things that I wanted to look at here, and this is part of what makes this feel so small, is you have the bezel is kind of set back in here. So you have a large case, but you have a smaller bezel. And this is reminiscent of what was done with the Horizons, which makes that one wear smaller too. And as a result, everything kind of comes in. Then you have the chapter ring that's deep set in there. So you have, in relative terms, a fairly small dial. And looking at the two here, this is a 42, this is a 44. And you can see it really looks to me smaller in size, at least from the top perspective. When you go over to the side, this is where the HH2 is thicker than the Swordfish. But ignore that case back, and you can see that case back is what makes up so much of the height. I was very surprised that when you actually stack these on a pillow, they're not that different from each other if you're looking at just the mid case and the bezel. This one has the taller bezel on it, and the mid case itself is right about the same, maybe even a hair thinner. So the overall profile, you've got flat crystal versus double dome crystal. You've got a really tall case back. So the actual watch itself doesn't wear altogether that differently than the Swordfish does, which was a really pleasant surprise. So now let's go ahead and take a look at the Lume. All right, looking at the Lume, on the left here we have the Meteorite version of the Mako V3. In the middle we have the Hammerhead 2 we've been looking at in this review. And then on the right we have the Bronze Meteorite Swordfish that we looked at for that we're looking at for a comparison. So with these three, you can see all three have very bright C3 for the green. The two on the left, for small touch, the third on the right have small touches of BGW9. On the far left, in the middle here, the BGW9 chapter ring is a really cool accent for both the Mako as well as the HH2. All of them glow really brightly throughout. Neat appearance as well as very functional. Flipping over to the crowns, I'll drop in a picture here. You can see the comparison, the HH2 on the right and the Mako on the left. That larger loomed crown just really pops and glows brightly. All right, so that's been a look at the Hammerhead 2. Really quite a nice watch all the way around. The specs, the features, the overall aspects of it. It's not, to me, what you would expect to see from the reviewing these specs. A lot of people with large wrist tend to feel that this is a little too small, and a lot of people that think their wrists are too small are surprised to find that this works better for them than they expect. So again, not a small watch, but very, very nice. In closing, to go through, since this is the second iteration, and since this is so different than the HH1, I thought it would be fun to look at, in my opinion, the perfect configuration for an HH3 if Elshan ever decides to produce one. Personally, I think it would be nice to see if the case back itself can be a little thinner, tuck it down into the wrist a little more like the HH1, if the mid case can be just a hair thinner, and overall just slim this down just a little bit. I think it'll scare less people off, especially when you're seeing the thinner specs for the overall without the crystal. With the crystal, I would like to see that actually go back to HH1, have that higher dome effect. I think it's a neat effect, and I think it makes it even more visually appealing on an already really cool watch. For the dial, the hands, all of that, I very much prefer that on the HH2. I think did a killer job with this one, and it's just in general a very nice, attractive watch that's extremely uniquely Zelos. It has a lot of signature features in there with having a completely unique styling. So if you're considering picking one of these up, I strongly recommend it. Thanks for watching.